we have the very good fortune to have Microsoft Vice President Steven Guggenheimer with us. I've worked with him for a number of years now. He used to run a group called Developer Experience. So for me as a developer and as a guy making shows about development, he was somebody I interacted with a lot. But he's got a new role. Microsoft is taking artificial intelligence very, very seriously. They've created this huge new team. He is now the AI business lead for artificial intelligence at Microsoft. Please give a warm welcome to Steven Guggenheimer.
Thanks, boss. You can't lose your developer roots. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having us. There's a special treat for me. So I played rugby for a long, long time, and over the years as I traveled around the world, people would get me jerseys. And believe it or not, like 15 years ago, the head of the International Association of Microsoft Certified Professionals was a guy named Per who came from Sweden, and he brought me this Swedish rugby jersey. And I know, not too big a sport here, but I've kept it in my closet, and I always argue with my wife, like, hey, someday it'll matter. Someday I'll get to wear it where it really counts. And so by having us here today, my 15 years of arguing with my wife, I win. So I appreciate that. Thanks for having us. And it's the beginning, and so we do really appreciate you having us. I'm gonna just sort of go at sort of the high level. I'm gonna cover AI, how we think about it, some of the work that we're doing. I'll mix in some videos. Orville, my partner in crime, is going to do a demo or two. I'll probably throw it in there. I had the translator slide up. We'll do a quick demo on that a little later on. So intent is to inform, create the understanding of all the areas that we're focused on and sort of how we think about it. And then from there, I'll stick around a little while for Q&A if you want, as well as Orville, and we'll get into it. Now, I like to mix in videos. We spend a lot of money on production of videos, so why not use them? So we'll kick off with, I think, the most recent one created for AI. Let's see if they have volume. Can you guys crank that up? They can. Gratuitous video over with. Now we'll get into the conversation. One of the things about AI is the potential is in some ways limitless. Like, people think about almost every scenario that they work on, every part of business, and we've been through this before. We spent the last 20 years with compute, storage, and networking thinking, okay, what could we do if we just had more compute, more storage, more networking? But now that we're at a point where we have those at a reasonable level, people look at new areas, IoT, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, et cetera, and think about possibilities that are much broader than anything we've had before. Now we're sort of early in the hype cycle, so the noise is in some ways ahead of the reality. But there's enough there that we can get going. The first thing is sort of, what do you think about relative to AI? It's about amplifying human ingenuity. It's about taking the business processes or the consumer scenarios, the things that we're already doing, and thinking about how we amplify them. It doesn't completely replace them. It's not a core change in everything we do. It's about doing things better. And then sort of, what is it? And there's debates. You can read lots of different areas. I think the first is reasoning over large sets of data, trying to come up with understanding and figuring things out. And then driving an understanding of what's going on underneath. And then at the end, trying to build a connection with humans. The simplest form we use is, today most of us sort of figure out how to work with a computer or a phone or any type of device. In the future, you want those devices to know how to work with us. And so how do you sort of move from reactive to predictive, and how do you move from us having to figure it out to the devices and the things we interact with figuring us out? And so it's that slow but sure change in that model. And then you get into a little bit of, maybe I have to use this. How you do? You know why today? Obviously, we've been on a technology progression. For me, I think about the last 20 years, 286 to 386, 386 to 486, 486 to Pentium. For those of you that are old enough, 5 1/4 floppies to 3 1/2. If you remember the iOmega drive, you laugh a little bit, and then you work your way up for storage. Same thing for, we think 2G, 3G, 4G. I remember flying over to any country and plugging the modem in the side of the phone in the hotel and hoping you could get an outward line for dialing in. So all of those coming together have been sort of the journey for the last 20 years. But now there's sort of three things for AI. Sort of the cloud or compute at scale. Right, that ability, we could work on when I came out of university, my roommate from university was a Lisp programmer. So he was working on AI at the time, and this is a long time ago. We'll just leave it at that. But there was nowhere to go unless you had the compute, unless you were working for a very large university or government agency or company, you just didn't have the tools to work with. Now with the cloud, whether it's us or Google or Amazon or others, that ability to get compute at scale and be able to burst to it, step one. The second is data, right? The phenomenal growth in data, and whether it's from devices and sensors or humans and all the information that gets put out there, you need the data to build models, to train models, and to make things better over time. And then the third, honestly, is tools to work with. So there's 20 years plus worth of research on the AI side that's gone into this. And that's where sort of that bridge comes in. Once you have all three of those, then we get to begin the journey, and that's pretty much where we are today. In particular, if you look at the AI innovation side, this is where a tremendous amount of work. And it doesn't matter whether you look at publishing papers, and 2017 will catch up to 2016. They all come in sort of in the publisher-perish mindset towards the end of the year. But whether it's the publishing of papers or the building of new tool sets, and so vision, there's this notion of a residual neural network. In this particular case, you look at layers of an image, and it used to be you could go 10 or 20 layers in, and then you'd lose a lot of fidelity. We've managed to get up to over 150 layers using new techniques. And so that's sort of innovation applied to image recognition, which when we get to the cognitive services, you need those breakthroughs. Same things happened with speech for a long time. There's a test called Switchboard. Us, IBM, others, we go back and forth, and you're constantly innovating. But you're at a point now where you can understand speech essentially at the level of humans. And so you're getting that particular piece underway. And each of these are new techniques. This next one, there's a company we acquired in Canada called Maluba, applying a new set of AI capabilities to basically working processes in parallel. And so here, they were able to beat Miss Pac-Man. For whatever reason, games are a really good place to play. It rolled the machine over at 999s. And so the pace of innovation is very high, but also applying the innovation into real world gives us tools to work with. So whether it's a bot framework or cognitive services or machine learning tools, having these capabilities or things that we can plug into the developer environment is what we need to make this work at scale. And so as a company, we've invested in all three of the areas. We have essentially compute at scale with Azure. It's globally available. You have sort of access, all of you have access at scale. We build all of our own AI tool sets on top of Azure. And of course, in an open source world, there's mixing and matching. There's frameworks we use that come from other places, whether it's Spark or Hadoop on the data side, whether it's CNTK, Tensor, Caffe. So that mix and match is still there, but we have the compute at scale. And then data. Data is rather, obviously critical, but rather interesting, because there's access to data through any of the sort of data that's available that you would work with. But also we have some unique data assets. Whether it's Bing, which allows us to have some reasoning over things going on in the world, sort of an outwardly bound view. Whether it's LinkedIn in sort of a human-centric view. Whether it's the graph that comes from the Microsoft Office products, Dynamics, Windows, et cetera, there's a set of unique data assets we can bring into the conversation that then you can mix and match with your own data sets and others. So that ability to sort of play in the cloud computing area, bring some unique tools into the data conversation, and then continue on the path of AI tools that others can use, that's our investment for AI for both the future and today. And if we think, okay, then how do we apply that? Look, we do three things. We're plumbers at heart, so we're working on, I'll call it an AI platform, but a platform for developers to build on using AI, lives above Azure, connects in with other platforms. I'll come back to it. The second is infusing AI into all of the products that we build, whether it's Office or Dynamics or Windows. AI is becoming more and more woven into the products. And if we do a good job, you don't know it. The products just work better. And so we'll spend a little bit of time on that. And the third, which an area I've been spending a bunch of time on, is building a new generation of solutions from the ground up using artificial intelligence. So traditional line of business applications are essentially, forms over data with a rules engine. There's a completely different approach for AI where you actually can ingest a very large amount of data, build a system of intelligence that lives above the system of record and below the system of engagement, and it's built in a completely different way. And so that notion of building a new generation of solutions using AI applied to the business processes or challenges that in the commercial world we all live with is an area that we're focused on as well. So these are the three areas. I thought I'd spend a little bit of time in each one of them. Platform first, I'll skip that particular slide. Platform stack, I'm not quite sure the right word to use, but you start all the way down at the bottom, CPUs, GPU, FPGA, essentially trying to get the ability to compute as close to the metal as you can. Pretty standard. GPUs are sort of state-of-the-art for external. FPGAs are state-of-the-art for internal, which means we use them for Bing, and they're custom-built chips, and as we get to scale, we make them available for others. On the data side, there's obviously all the work we do on SQL, there's the data lake, there's all the tools for data, and then there's everything for compute there, whether it's Spark, we do some batch AI work, so you can actually do training with a batch level. And then above the core infrastructure, there's a new set of services. And so whether it's cognitive services, whether it's the bot framework, whether it's Azure Machine Learning, there's a new set of services that are very specific to AI. And then on the tool side, where we plug into VS, where we build our own tools, and then there's the deep learning frameworks. We build one, there's open source one with Google, obviously with Tensor, there's Caffe, there's the Chainer guys in Japan, there are others, and so these will come in and go out, and they'll be favorites for, I don't know, we'll see how long they last before others come in and go out. And so that's an area where there'll be a lot of innovation over the core amount of time. Our trick or our challenge is to try and mix flexibility with productivity. So how do you build tools that are flexible, which means you guys can adapt them and change them and alter them, but also make them easy to use? So how do you balance between data scientists and people who really want to be down at the metal and giving every developer the opportunity to work with sort of AI tools? And that generally the challenge with most new areas, no different here. When we look at cognitive services and all of our finished services, the bot framework, the cognitive services, the machine learning toolkit, that's what we're trying to do, is get the best of both worlds. I'll skip this slide. On the cognitive services side, this is originally a lot of independent work to create essentially services that mimic our human cognitive services, so the ability to see things, hear things, speak, reason. And so we're building a set of services, vision, language, speech. I think of search and knowledge as reasoning. Over time, these come from essentially the Bing engine to start with. So you have very large data sets we can use for building the cognitive services, for training the services, and creating starting points that we can all use. The trick then we want to do over time is customize those. But in the beginning, it's just building a core service that others could use. So I have a quick video that sort of brings to life the vision service through a customer putting it to use. And in this case, it's Uber for verification, so I'll go ahead and run that.
We come to work every day to pilot, test, and launch new technology solutions. Real-time ID check is the latest technology example where we at Uber are constantly developing and testing new solutions to predict, prevent, and reduce security risks in ways that weren't possible before. It's through this partnership with Microsoft that we've been able to develop this technology quickly and ensure that every rider and every driver has an excellent experience. Real-time ID check is a prompt that appears in the driver's app asking them to take a self photo. We can do a check in real time to make sure that that identity of the person who took the picture matches the account holder who's been approved to drive. Doing that serves a couple of purposes. Drivers know that their identities and their accounts are being protected, and riders know that the driver who they're with has been screened.
Jen?
Evan?
Yeah.
Hi.
Real-time ID is a smart technology. What that means is it factors in and addresses the edge cases. The situation where the driver is wearing glasses or a hat and they weren't in the identification that we have on file. The beautiful thing is it can recognize these changes and ask the driver to remove their sunglasses or retake the photo. The partnership with Microsoft Cognitive Services allowed us to go from idea to execution to implementation across the country in a matter of months. Already, we've been able to make thousands of rides safer, and very soon we're going to be making millions of rides safer through this technology.
So just one use of cognitive service, we see pretty much all of them being put to use, whether it's recognizing images or humans. Speech has become very popular, language, translation, and a lot of where we see it coming together is with virtual agents, trying to create a virtual agent for an interaction with humans, whether it's inside an organization or outside of an organization. The second piece of these, so as we built these, we built them so anyone could use them. So a simple face recognition application, not too hard to build. We've done others, how old are you, what dog do you look like? You can figure out all kinds of fun things to do with this for show and tell, not for real use. But the second piece of this is to allow them to be customizable. So there's a lot of places this comes into play. With language, and I'll show a video of gaming in a few minutes, a lot of game developers will create their own worlds in their own languages. So when you try and use our speech cognitive service, it doesn't recognize the words and it keeps sort of giving you errors over and over again. So that ability to train it for what you want. Or images. If I hold up a picture of a cow and a picture of a giraffe, having used the Bing, all the images there, you'll easily get that correct. If I ask you what type of cow, unless you're an expert at the cows, it won't have trained for that. So that ability to take the core cognitive services that we have and then create custom versions for vision, for speech, for language, then allows you or other developers to make them very specific to the scenarios that they're applying them to. And so let me bring up an example of that in action.
So think about this. How often are you alive when the dawn of a new medium comes out? I knew that I had to be a part of VR because there are no rules for what VR should be. Starship Commander is a choose-your-own-adventure VR narrative that uses natural language processing, so you can actually have a real conversation with the characters.
I'm Sergeant Sarah Pearson. I've been assigned to your wing today.
When we started making Starship Commander, we had to figure out how do we get technology that can understand what a person's saying so that we can have these new narrative experiences. We're a science fiction game. We come up with new words. No off-the-shelf software could let us put in custom words.
Who are the Echnians?
In our story, the bad guys are called the Echnians. And every time we said Echnian, it would come up with really weird words that were similar to other things that you would say. And so it would get confused all the time. So we needed to make sure that we could supply our own script. We started using Microsoft Cognitive Services to power the back end of Starship Commander.
Looks cool.
Once we plugged custom speech service into Starship Commander, I had tears in my eyes when I was playing it because it's like, oh my God, this is it. This is the experience we want.
Open the hatch.
Voice print accepted. Welcome, Commander.
You can essentially put your script in there and it knows, oh, these are the ways that people are gonna talk. And these are the phrases that they're gonna say.
Cool. What's my mission?
Must be something pretty important.
And then the second thing too was the intent detection. With Lewis, you basically give it a couple statements. After you've given it a couple statements, you crunch it and you start typing in your own statements, and it's shockingly scary how good it picks up even stuff that you didn't put in there.
Computer, use autopilot and let's be on our way.
Autopilot engaging.
I have never seen an opportunity like this, where there's a wide open playing field No one's written the rules yet. There's going to be tons of amazing software out there, and I just can't wait to see what other people write.
I like that one. So the cognitive services are, for a lot of folks, a starting point. Picking one of them, starting to interface it with something else they're building, whether it's speech or images or language. The second piece often is the bot framework, which is creating some type of agent or bot front end for the experience. And we're early in this. There are more bots being created than people using them, so we're definitely early. But we will get there. The notion of having a phone, or any device with a really long tail of apps. So, the one time of year I get to come to Stockholm, looking up the train service or loading the app for the train service or the bus service versus just being able to ask that question in whatever dialogue interface I use, whether that's a messenger dialogue, whether it's a Skype dialogue, whether it's a text dialogue or some other chat dialogue, seems a little crazy. And so creating these front-end agents, whether it's for consumer consumption or within the business, is the direction we're going in. And when we started building them ourselves, we ran into a challenge, which is for each one of the channels we wanted to use, we had to have a different development team because the way you do it for Facebook Messenger and the UI is different than the way you would do it for Skype and the way it interfaces or Kik or Slack or any of the others. And so we actually started building this bot framework or this front end so that as we built a bot, we could apply it across all of the channels we wanted to. And we're starting to see this come into play in lots of scenarios. I was in the UK on the way here, visiting with a large consumer packaged goods. They're starting to take their HR internal system, which is traditionally some type of SharePoint site. You can go out and get information and create an agent. It's got a personality. You can ask it questions. Hey, I just got married. I want to change my name. What do I do with my 401k? So you can start to build a front-end conversational where you can ask questions. There's some limitations. There's, how many turns can you go? How do you get to a deeper level of question or sort of challenge and response and help people get to the right direction? But for a lot of things that are pretty much traditional QA, what time does the convention center open? What's the address for the convention center? How do I get there? Lots of simple, what's the train schedule? A lot of those can be done with sort of a chat-based or an agent or bot-based front end. And so creating a tool set for this that allows you to take it out to as many channels as possible. So if I run customer care or support, and I want to let people come and ask me questions from Facebook, from the web, from text messaging, we can simplify the approach to that. And we're seeing a lot of energy sort of in this space with people building bots and agents as a starting point. With that, I was going to have Orville actually take the cognitive services, the bot framework, and compose those into a scenario, the type of thing we're starting to see. So this is Orville McDonald. We're going to switch machines, and we'll let you take over for a couple minutes.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Orville McDonald, and this is my first time in Stockholm, so I'm having a great time so far. But the one thing I realized, and you see it a lot when you travel, is that as you go to different sites on the web, for example, it will give you the local version. So if you're like me, you're a native English speaker, so seeing a site in Swedish, a little confusing. You have to try to figure things out. But the one cool thing is that because I work in the AI space, right, I'm often thinking about what are the new experiences that could be enabled? And this is one thing I want to kind of highlight with this Litware insurance demo, which is as you start to think about AI and the applications that you're developing, don't necessarily think about them in the way that you develop applications today. Instead, think of what would happen if I have cognitive ability within my app? What new scenarios could be opened up? In the case with this Litware insurance demo, as you saw earlier in the Uber app, we're able to use the human as the verification mechanism and not your standard username and password. So let me show you how something like that would work. So the first thing I want to do is actually go through and train it. And we're going to do two-factor authentication, but instead of using the password and something else like an SMS code, instead we're going to use my voice and my likeness to be the password. So let's give this a go. And let's hope this works, because with the echo sometimes this gets a little interesting. My voice is my passport. Verify me. Great. So it goes through. It's detecting my voice. So now when I use that phrase, it will know kind of what to do. So let's move on to the next step. So now I got to do a selfie. I don't know about you, but I'm not really big on the selfie thing, but let's see if I can make it work. Go through there. I'll be happy because I'm in Stockholm. Am I satisfied with this? Are we satisfied with this photo? Does it work? Okay, cool. Let's give that a go. Not super confident that it'll pick me up, but one thing you can see is that it gives you this confidence interval, right? And depending on how you set up your app, you could actually do this several times if you're looking for a certain threshold. Maybe you want to get to 80 or 90%. But I have enough confidence in my coworkers' work that I think 57% will be acceptable. So we'll take that one. So now Litware knows who I am, so I could use that for authentication. So let's go through and let's just get started. So the first thing you're going to see is I have this bot right here. And as I mentioned earlier, often when you're in a different country, you see sites in different languages. What would be really good is if the sites could be more customized and tailored to my preferences. So I learned one word in Swedish since I've been here, which is hello. So I'll go and type that in. And the great thing now is that because it's using the bot framework with cognitive services, it's actually doing the translation. So it's detected that Swedish is the language that was used, and now it gives me a response in Swedish. However, if I was to speak French, which is one of the languages I learned a little bit when I was younger, bonjour, we see that now it auto-detected that, and now it switches into French. So regardless of like who shows up, you could type the language that you're comfortable with, and we will auto-detect the language, and then we're able to give you that response in return. However, the language I'm most comfortable with is English, so let's go back to that. And in the demo for Starship Commander, he talked a little bit about LUIS, which is our language understanding APIs. And what that helps with is providing some of the context into what's saying, trying to capture the intent. So I'm going to go and just have a conversation here with my bot. So let's see here. So I'm going to say, what can you do? Just to kick the tires a little bit. And it goes through and it looks like it can help me with all my insurance needs. They're available for me 24/7, so this looks like a good insurance company. But I also want to know where they're located. So where is your company based? There you go. So you can see here that I'm able to just type in my own natural language. It's able to figure out kind of what my intent is, and in turn give me an appropriate response for kind of what I'm asking. So the next thing I want to know is, I like to save money. I think most of us do. So I don't know if I could get a discount. So go through there and I'll take a look. Looking at it, it looks like they can give me a discount, which is a great thing. So I think I'm going to go ahead and get some insurance. And the reason why I'm going to get some insurance is I recently got a brand new car, so I want to insure it. Because I don't know how it is in Sweden, but in America, you definitely need to have your insurance before you drive. So I'm going to go type that in right now. I need insurance. And you can see as I type things, most of my responses have been really text-based. But with the way the bot framework's set up, you could actually add rich media to it as well. So I have this carousel here where I could see there's auto insurance, property insurance, life insurance. Today, what I primarily care about is auto insurance. So let me go and select that option. So it looks like they could help me. That is great. I am an existing customer. You remember that I did the authentication setup earlier. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to pretend that I'm Lance Olson. I am not Lance Olson, but that works for today. Great. So we go through here. So I had set up the smart authentication before, so let's go through and do that, and let's kick the tires on that and see how that turns out. So the first thing it's doing is it's giving me the phrase that it wants me to say, and it's going to prompt me to say it. So let's try that. My voice is my passport. Verify me. So right now it's capturing the audio and it's going to go through and it's going to do a verification of the voice kind of on the back end. And the next step is it's going to want to take a picture of me. So we'll go through and we're going to do the selfie piece. But before we do the selfie, I want to show a little bit about kind of how easy it is to implement this kind of code. So I'll switch over to Visual Studio Code. And we can see here that I have a little code snippet. So when I go and I capture my face, I have this face service client right over here. And pretty much I'll just make an asynchronous call, and I'll send it the details, and I actually have it over here if you're interested in seeing it. And just with that one line of code, it's able to go out, call the API, do the verification, and then give me the response back. If I have multiple pictures, that could be returned as well. So it's really about how detailed you want to get with it. You can't see because it cuts off, but the max number of pictures we really need back is just one. We just want to make sure that this worked, and we're keeping it a very simple one. So let me go through here. So before where I was happy to sign up for this because I'm in Stockholm, I'm doing this demo, I don't really like spending money, so I'm actually kind of sad that I got to go spend the money on the insurance instead of making my car like super nice or adding a stereo to it. So I'm gonna put on my sad face. So it goes through and it gets that. And as I mentioned earlier, when you're creating a system using AI, it's really important that you think about the new scenarios that could be enabled. Because, oh, what happened here? Okay, that did not work. Let's try that again. Sometimes with the lighting in the room, this gets a little tricky. Let's try this. My voice is my passport. Verify me. I'll do the face recognition one more time. So in case any of you were wondering if I'm doing a canned demo, it's pretty clear that I'm doing a live one right now. Okay, let's try that again. Try automotive. So the one thing that's interesting with this is that I've done this a million times and I've never had this problem. But of course, when I'm in front of a few hundred of my closest friends, that's when we start seeing this. Olson. Okay. My voice is my passport. Verify me. Maybe I was a little too sad, so maybe I'll be less so this time. Interesting. Okay. I'm going to try this one last time. General rule of demos, if it doesn't work twice, move on. But I'm going to give it a little trick here. One second. Go through here. Because I refuse to deprive the great folks in Stockholm the opportunity to see this awesome demo. Okay, so let's do and train. So it looks like before when I accepted that 50%, I probably should have did it a little higher. My voice is my passport. Verify me. My voice is my passport. Verify me. My voice is my passport. Verify me. Okay, so I promised you I was going to show you a lot of goodness, but for some reason the demo gods are not on my side today. But the one thing I wanted to highlight before I step off the stage is that some of the things I want to show was that in addition to being able to do this two-factor authentication using my own likeness, I could also take advantage of AI on the back end so that when I'm getting a quote for the insurance, it could tap into my existing systems of records so it could see kind of like what other insurance policies I have, what my driving record is like, and in turn make an analysis very quickly and give me a quote. And then when I respond, if I respond unhappy, saying, for example, that it was too expensive, that in turn it could detect the emotion not just in my face with the picture, but also in text as well, and then give me an appropriate response and redirect me to a human. So even though unfortunately the demo gods were not on my side this time, I think I lost my winning record. I just want to say that with cognitive services, the bot framework, you're enabled, it's possible to enable a lot of great scenarios. And I wish you all the best with your coding. Thank you.
I promise not to tease him later when you guys aren't around. That would never happen. Sadly, we've all been there, so I'll just get it back. So if you think of the cognitive services in the bot framework, they're sort of the upper end of the stack. Sort of if we're building the experience, we can take advantage of that. We can customize the cognitive services. It's reasonably simple to work with. We've got tools for that. If you go a layer down, and let me skip past this. If we're working with the data scientists, this is back to flexibility and productivity. Here we go. Then there's another set of tools for the machine learning side and the deep learning side. And those are, we made an acquisition of a company called Revolution Analytics years ago, and sort of weaving R into what we're doing with SQL, with the data lake, into the tool set. And so there's a set of algorithms to work with, there's a set of tools, and you can work in Python, you can sort of work in drag and drop, but it allows you to get to that next level down if you're actually trying to build models for the first time, you're working against large data sets, you're trying to retrain things. And so there's a set of tools in place for the machine learning side, and then a layer below that. If you want to use a cognitive toolkit, you're worried about performance, you're worried about scale, whether it's TensorFlow, Caffe, Chainer, CNTK, there's a few others that go along, built into Visual Studio and other tool sets, and then all the way down to the metal. And so that's the CPU, GPU, the FPGAs. There is the opportunity to batch AI training if you have very large sets of data. So when you think about work we do in Bing and some of the other very large sets, we'll use these tool sets for those early machine learning models and those deep learning models that we're building. The platform then is sort of all the pieces together. And sort of my feedback to everyone is go off and play. And generally start with cognitive services and the bot framework. Go build a simple bot. Go build something. If you're a data scientist and you want to work a layer down, you're already doing it anyway. So just decide which pieces you may want to use or how to plug in. Once you get down that path, then you can think more about scenarios. Typically pick one. Like when I go and see business leaders in most organizations and you start having a conversation of AI, it spreads to every possible thing you could do. And so you have to narrow it back down to where it makes sense, where it can be implemented, where you can see a return that's pretty specific to the business, and not try and apply it to everything all at once. There's this notion of, quote, AI developers. There are developers, and then there are scientists who are researchers who live and breathe in AI. There are data scientists. AI will get woven into what developers sort of do over time, but I don't think there's a lot of, quote, core AI developers yet. And so how do we help developers take advantage of the tool sets, have you guys start building things, let data scientists go off and continue, and then honestly let our researchers and other researchers continue to build. The tool sets move so quickly right now, and the models. So when you look back at that, whether it's the Vision API or the language work and why it's changing so fast, there's different ways to build models being created all the time. And as a result, even when we build solutions, 1 year later we have to rethink about how we built that solution because there are new methods and techniques. Our development teams are sort of half researchers and half developers. Very few of them are just all one or all the other. The next phase of what we do is we weave it into our own products. And that, if we do a good job, you don't notice it. And so there's lots of places we do this. If Word, you started with squiggly lines under words that were misspelled, that's not really AI. Then you start to look a little bit at grammar, heading on the right path. Now if you write a full page of text, it'll look it over, and it'll say, the sentence structure in the first paragraph, you have two sentences with the same structure, use the same word twice, or maybe if you rewrote it this way, it would look better. It just feels like somebody helping you, but there is AI in the background for that. Even there's a funny little transition that Orville did in the PowerPoint earlier, where it went from 3 circles to 1. If you ask for help in PowerPoint, like you give it a bunch of pictures and have it do layouts, there's AI in the back end for that. The transitions, there's artificial intelligence sort of coming up with ideas for how you do that. In Outlook, the way it sorts your mail, right? And there's work we do on the back end. You can imagine threat protection for Windows or Azure in the cloud. There's a lot of AI being used in that. How we normalize Skype on the back end, how we do all of the work to make sure we're managing the traffic. So throughout our products, we're starting to weave it in. And again, if we do a good job, hopefully you don't notice it or you don't think about it as AI. So I was going to do a demo building off of some of the work we've been doing. So let me shut his demo down, and hopefully he hasn't cursed this machine. We'll give it a try. Can you switch over to this machine? So one of the things we've been working on is taking the language tools, and actually we have a full video indexer, but we'll just start with language and translation. So in Skype today, we do language-to-language translation, and so we'll do real-time. We can start to apply this then into a product. So if I take PowerPoint, and I have a button here, and we just downloaded this off the web, so there's start subtitles. I can go English to Swedish, and so I'm going to say next. And it's going to give you a QR code. It'll generate a new slide, so if we had lots of people in different languages, we could generate a few of these. If you had the translator app loaded, you could go off and run. And then what it'll do is it'll start to translate as I'm speaking. And I have According to the guys in the back, it does a pretty good job. I'll tell over time, but I can then take my statement from Bill. What if we could build computers that one day could see, hear, talk, and understand human beings? And in 91, that was a pretty good observation. So Bill's always been a little forward thinking. I can take the next one. The best way to predict the future is to invent it. And so over time, building this real-time translation, whether it's perfect yet or not, having just come back from a trip to Japan and having the real-time translators, you can see a lot of opportunity over time to really put this to use. And it'll get better as it learns and as I work with it. So that's a tool set, then building it directly into the product. If I go down here and I stop subtitles, hit escape. The other way I can apply this is I can translate the slide. So if you've ever done a presentation and you want to give it out to 20 other languages, it's sort of a pain in the butt. You ask your friends in the other country to translate it for you, and you have no idea what they've done. But here I can just translate the slides. Again, I'll go English to Swedish. I'll save this. And so now I have the same slides that have been auto-translated for me. So pretty cool use of taking the technology, applying it into our everyday products, whether it's Skype or whether it's PowerPoint. We have others that get more sophisticated, so we're videotaping this. There is a video indexing solution that'll do both the translation to other languages, recognize the speaker, it'll do sentiment analysis, and so sort of give some background to go along with it and help you slice and dice and edit it, meta tags. So very powerful tools that can be applied. By the way, how well did it do? Okay, all right. Microphones and large rooms don't help, but how did it do on the translation in the written piece? So it's a little better there. Apparently, some have said I speak fast. I don't think that's true, but there's some rumor to that. Can we switch back? So that's an area where, again, we're applying the technology into all of our products. And so that was the translator side of it. And I think that'll get better over time. Incredibly useful for sort of broad global audiences, because essentially we can pick 4 or 5 languages, have the QR codes for all of them, then you can sit on either your phone or your PC and be watching along with the real-time subtitles. The last place we then work on is the platform is one element, infusing it into our own products is a second, and the third is building a new generation of solutions. And so as I noted, I was in the UK on my way here, large company building sort of an HR agent inside of the company, a bot essentially to interface with the folks. We've been playing with this as well. If you have sort of a large set of data, large customer base, and somewhat consistent processes, you can start to use the tool set. So for example, on Microsoft.com today, when you do a chat session, the agent that you're working with is actually an agent that we built using AI. And it's as opposed to sort of starting with the bot framework and cognitive services and doing sort of a QA, we went the other way. We ingested our entire knowledge base, a year's worth of chat logs, built a DNN out of that, helped create the context. And then you have to go back and work with the team that's there, the subject matter experts, to understand intent, to make sure the intents match, map intents to entities and then solutions, create a dialogue path. But then the AI's on the agent side around the conversation. I can't log into my machine. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, are you trying to log into the PC? Are you trying to log into Office? Are you trying to log into Skype so you can ask a question? I'm trying to log into Windows machine. Okay, that's good. Windows 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, okay, well then here's the information. But there's 100 different ways you can ask or say I can't log in. And so the ability to sort of either ask a clarifying question, propose a solution, or if we're somewhat lost or we're struggling, hand it off to the agent at the right time before the customer's upset is a real trick. And we handle about 600,000 chat sessions a week right now using the agent externally, right? And that's a big number. So we're starting to get down the path. We have others that we're starting to work with. We use this for our sales. If you think about customer lifecycle management, you get 100 leads from your website, you get 100 leads from an event, your CEO hands you 10 leads. How do you decide who to call when? Where do you put your energy? Who do you send email to? Who do you call? When do you follow up? So all of the things around sort of the life cycle of a customer. Forecasting, if you have a very large sales force, you ask them every month to please give us your forecast. You judge it. They judge it in the country, then you send it into wherever the headquarters is, they judge it again in headquarters. So why not just look at the macro and economic factors, take your being unique information, data that's there, look at all the history you have, and provide a forecast out and ask for people to tune it. So there's lots of places that you can start to apply this in business scenarios. And then we see lots of other companies, whether it's the HR side, whether it's the customer side, starting to take these solutions and apply that in real-world scenarios. So I always come back around to the, on the platform side, have somebody in the organization start working with the technology. Cognitive Services Bot Framework or the ML tool set, start to build something. Pick one bespoke solution that you want to focus on where you can see real value, it fits with the business, it's not overextending, both where the technology is and sort of where you are as a company or a business. And then the third, recognize that over time there'll be these solution sets that may not be the sexiest or the coolest things, but in some cases they're sort of the most fundamental parts of the company or the business, and know that AI will get applied to those. Once you work across those three, that's the journey that we're all collectively on. And for us, that's part of the path. There is no better way to predict the future than to invent it. So we're very focused on three areas: the platform, building it into our own products, and then building a new generation of solutions that are thought about or built from a different orientation, start from an AI processes and approaches as opposed to the traditional sort of forms over data, and rebuild the models that we use for thinking about line of business applications. So with that, if you want more information, the site's Microsoft.com AI. What is today? I don't know. Today's a day. A couple of days from now, that site will get refreshed for Ignite. So we're heading into a conference in the US, which is a reasonably large one. We'll refresh it. You'll see fresh content there. You'll see some updates and some news come out at the event itself. And with that, I thank you for your time. Orville and I will hang around for a little while. I think there's a coffee break, so if there's questions, we can just go offline and answer them. With that, look, I hope this was helpful. I hope you guys have a good rest of the show, and thanks again for having us in Sweden.